Hello, friends. This is your host and humble narrator, Tony Figueroa. I am the artist and writer, self-publisher of Wrestler Zero, a comic book about a mass wrestler who fights weird menaces. Um, that's a little bit from issue number one. And then moving along, we have some stuff from issue number two here. This comic, purely a labor of love, and most definitely inspired by the films of El Santo, Blue Demon, and Mil Máscaras. But today, what I want to continue talking about is how to draw books, and this is the second of three videos on that topic, and some books here that I recommend and for various reasons. But what unifies all these books is the approach to the fundamentals of drawing. And so we'll start off with this book here, Simplified Forms by Michael Lauricella. Apologies if I massacred his last name. And as you can see here, just as the title says, it's simplified forms, reducing the body down to the most basic of shapes. And this is a crucial bit of knowledge for anybody who's interested in drawing the figure, regardless of style. You first have to reduce everything down to basic forms with correct proportion, balance, and things like that before you can move on to inking your drawings and coloring them and stuff like that. If you don't have the drawing down at this stage, excuse me, then you don't have anything. If you don't have it at this stage, I would recommend remaining at this stage until you have it down pat. So there's that. And then he has another book on folds and creases, and don't know about you, but this is certainly an area in which I could probably use some help. It's definitely something I'm limited in because my experience thus far is, drawing people in skin tight costumes or sometimes in a suit or regular clothing. But this is drawing folds, the different types of folds, the way material lays on the body is a crucial knowledge for any artist. And I strongly recommend this book. The nice thing about this series of books is that they're very small books. They're compact and very affordable on Amazon or eBay. And I think just about all the books that I have recommended and I'm addressing in this video are relatively affordable and easily available. This one is on hands and feet, and that's always a challenging topic for any artist. But as you can see here, he's reducing things down to basic forms. He is giving you some anatomical knowledge in this book. And you don't need to know the names of all the muscles and the names of all the bones in order to be able to draw well. This is stuff that you will learn just through repetition. But it's good to know what's under the surface, because what's under the surface is definitely going to inform the surface area that you are drawing. So I really strongly recommend this little book. And there's one here about muscled bodies. I think the title pretty much says it all. And it's how to make your characters look much more heavy and muscular. And if that's the look that you're going for, then this is a nice resource. But even if it isn't, you could take, let's say, that pose right there with the arms upraised and slim it down. I mean, you don't have to take it just as it's given. You can, and he's showing you where the rib cage is positioned, relative to all the muscles. So I would, strongly recommend this one also. And again, if you're going to copy from here, you don't have to make the characters as huge as this. You can slim them down, but this is going to get you started in the right direction. It's pretty good. And here's a book that I rely on actually quite a bit. It's Portrait Drawing by Wendon Blake, again, easily available online. Now, you may say to yourself, well, I'm not interested in being a portrait artist, and I'm not either. However, the one thing that portrait artists are extremely good at is a construction of the human head, the placement of features, and how to light the head in such a way as to give it three-dimensional mass. And this is a fantastic little book just for that purpose. And you get the whole gamut. You begin with the basic shape for the face, and then it moves on to the placement of the features, which is crucial if you're trying to get a resemblance. And once the features are placed, then we get into doing some lighting. Even if you don't draw in this toned academic way, The information in this book is hugely valuable because if you're good at drawing heads with good facial expressions and you're good at drawing hands that accentuate those expressions, you're going to be ahead of most people. And this is an area that I need to improve in. So this is a book that I use quite a bit, actually. So I'm going to put that right there. The next thing is, this is published by a magazine called Imagine FX, which is a magazine that's devoted more to digital artists, but they do have some information for traditional artists such as myself. But even with digital artists, the fundamentals of drawing still have to be present. It's not as if though working digitally somehow frees you from needing to know the basics of drawing. So what they decided to do in this magazine, and there was a follow-up issue, which I have somewhere around here, is to recruit some great artists like Chris Legaspi and Ron Lemon, to mention just two, to show you different approaches to drawing the figure. And this is really a terrific information. This is the Riley method. Frank Riley was an artist, I think from the early 20th century, and he had this method of drawing, which is much more linear, the use of geometric shapes. This might be something that you're interested in. I'm not going to dismiss it. It does have some value. I don't use it a lot, but I recognize that it can work for some people. And this is just another approach to gesture. And again, breaking things down into the most basic forms. As you can see right here, almost like this wire hanger concept. For the trapezius and the clavicles, it forms what looks like a wire hanger. And then you have the oval flattened on both sides of the rib cage. And here the head, neck, and trapezius is being drawn, and it's being given some dimension. I would really recommend that you seek this out. You can probably get this on eBay. It might be a little bit expensive, but it is worth every penny. And look, if you're interested in improving your artwork, then you have to be prepared to spend some money because it requires a level of commitment. And I don't think a magazine like this is going to be unreasonably expensive. So, just beautiful stuff, very useful, extremely informative. A section on drawing feet. I mean, what more can you ask for, right? So I strongly recommend this. However, if you can't find these single back issues, they were nice enough to reprint both of those issues into one magazine-sized edition, and it features all the information from the first two issues. I go to Borders on a semi-regular basis, and I always see this there, so I imagine that it must be either a big seller for them or something, because I always see it there. This is also available on eBay and Amazon. I would really strongly recommend this. This also gets into doing some animal anatomy, because more than likely you're going to end up drawing animals at some point, so you should be familiar at least with the basic structure. This is more of a, shall we say, a manga-esque approach to drawing the female figure. If you're a beginner or even intermediate, I would sort of stick with a more traditional look, simply because once you understand how things are supposed to look, then you can start deviating from it. Because if you begin with exaggeration or extreme stylization, the work is going to be lacking a certain something because you sort of skipped over the most important part. Style will come. You will develop that over time and repeated effort. But again, just going back to when you have a material that stresses the fundamentals, gesture, using basic forms and shapes, this is quality instruction. This is not simply tips and tricks. This is not trendy. This is where it all begins, regardless of what your drawing style is, regardless of what you're interested in. So I give this 2 thumbs up for sure. All right, moving right along. I'm going to show you some of the books that I use on a regular basis and what I've gotten out of them. Now, one thing I do want to talk about before going on with, these books is if you can't afford art school, which I understand is very expensive, try getting into perhaps if there's an informal figure drawing group, maybe at a local art gallery, maybe at a local community college. Try to get yourself involved in that because it has two benefits. The first benefit being that you're going to be working from the live model. You're going to be seeing a figure in three-dimensional space and how lighting affects it, how the figure is lit, all of those technical things. Second, you're going to be around other people who have a love for drawing, have a passion for drawing. You might even make a friend or two. The important thing is to get around people who share your passion for artwork, because you can learn from them. Sometimes you can learn what to do. Sometimes you can learn what not to do. But the important thing is to be involved with people. Now, I know that all of the work that we do, certainly all of the artwork that I do for public consumption, I do that because, I tend to work alone, as most artists do. But it's good to have people who share your passion. It could just be people maybe you meet at your local comic book shop. It could be a group that you're involved with on social media where artwork is posted and it's shared and tips and techniques are shared. But you definitely want to learn from people. Another thing that in the absence of being able to go to school or even find some informal training is contact an artist whose work you like on social media. Of course, be polite, be respectful because they are giving, you're asking them for some time, and see if you can engage them in a talk about what books they might recommend, what techniques they might recommend, materials they might recommend. And if they're amenable to talking to you, perhaps you can even ask them if they provide lessons, if they're willing to give you a critique. There may be a fee involved because after all, these are professional people and their time is worth something. But in all cases, be polite and be respectful. And also be prepared for the fact that some artists are just not nice people. And most of the vast majority of artists that I've encountered, either in conventions or in any other setting, have been very kind, very accommodating. But you do sometimes meet people who are neither, and you have to be ready for that. If you show a professional artist work and they critique it up one side and down the other, it's not personal. Take the instruction, learn from it, and just continue to improve. We've all been there. I've had critiques of my work, and I've gotten my work torn apart. So when I show my work to an artist, the first thing I usually say is, I know I need to improve everything about my work. Where do I begin? And that question establishes the fact that you're there to learn and that you are not going to try to defend your work or make excuses about, poor quality of work, let's just say. If you at the end of the day, if you really want to improve your artwork, you may not know any artists, you may not talk to any people, you just may strictly have books and YouTube videos and tutorials to rely on. If that's what you have, then that's what you work with. Because if you're dedicated to improving, you will find a way to improve. That's just the way it is. And I think the great Alex Toth, comic book artist and animation designer from some years past, said it best when he said, use it all, sift it all, and assess it all. I like comic book art that's more quote unquote traditional, stuff that, was being done in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But I don't turn a blind eye to other types of artwork, including artwork outside of comics. I'm a huge fan of Renaissance and classical art and stuff like that. And I think that's, pretty important to have that in your arsenal. So anyway, we looked at this book, Portrait Drawing, so we're going to set it aside. And we looked at this one in our last video, but this is a book that I use quite a bit. And I would strongly recommend that you do too. Again, the reduction of things to basic forms. You have that. And then this right here. If you take nothing else from this book, this page is incredible. Okay? And in the next video that I do on this series, I am going to show you exactly how I use that information to create gestures and drawings. But again, I showed you this one in the last video, and it's just great stuff. And this book is one that I go to a lot because when it comes to books, you have to sit with them for a while. You have to really study them. You have to use them a lot to get the information out of them. You just don't, you just don't buy a book on how to draw and copy a few things out of it, set it aside, and not look at it again, because you're not going to get the value of the information. You have to start on page 1, work your way through, go back to the beginning, and do it all over again. Repeat as often as necessary. This stuff right here, this is lifetime worth of practice and study. And it's continuing education. That's what art is. It's continuing education. You have to adopt the mindset of an eternal student. And I use this book also. This is what I keep with me at all times. And there's one more book here I want to show you that I also use quite a bit. And it's a book that's not really well known by a lot of people. And I discovered this book by accident. I was checking out the artwork of a British artist I like quite a bit called Rob Moran, who works in a very strict photographic style. And he had used some of the poses from here. And someone in the comments had mentioned this book as the source. And so I have several copies of this book because, as you can see here, this is just beautiful photography. Look at how dynamic that pose is. You have forms moving forward. His right hand is moving forward towards you. The left arm is moving away. Left leg is moving away. Right leg is coming towards you. This is a comic book pose. It's an action pose. It's extremely dynamic. And this book is a extremely useful reference. That also has the female figure, and I'm going to avoid showing you some of the frontal nudity stuff. It's been airbrushed out, but still. Just beautiful poses here. Now, you may say to yourself, well, gee, this doesn't look like comics. And I think this is a problem that I would have had when I was a teenager, was that if it didn't look like comic books, I just wasn't interested in it. But you cannot have good drawing, regardless of whether it's comic books, commercial art, illustration, whatever, if you cannot grasp these fundamentals here. Look at this leg coming towards you. This is a cylinder. That arm coming this way is another cylinder. Cylinder. Okay? You have these different shapes working together to create this beautiful pose. And if you look at this right here, again, look at the shapes that are involved here. Almost a rectangular shape here. This is more of almost a circular shape, or a triangle, actually. It's a very modified triangle going into this almost rectangular shape here. Just beautiful stuff. And in my next video, I'm going to show you how I break some of this stuff down into basic shapes to be able to draw it. And there's one more book I want to show you here, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I know I'm going to massacre this gentleman's name. This is Gottfried Bamis or Bames. I'm not sure. But this is a pretty hefty book, actually. And unlike the other books I've recommended to you, it's not cheap. But brother, this book is worth every penny and then some. I could go over the whole book with you, but that would make an extremely long video. Suffice it to say that this book is chock full of good, solid, basic information. Look at the reduction there of the skeleton to this mannequin shape. Just fantastic stuff. Look at how they're drawing the outline of the body and the way the skeleton moves underneath the skin envelope. Here you have nude. There is some nudity in this book for artistic purposes, of course. Just great stuff here. Let's see, I have to gets a little bit into the structure of the rib cage. Now, why is this important? Well, if you look at this right here, okay, your pectoral muscles are generally going to be right there. And the muscle fits around the bone. It's on the bone, but it also is affected, right? So that's where your pectorals are going to lay. And it's good to understand what's underneath the skin even if you're not drawing it. Okay, and they just got these really ripped people to pose for this book. Again, a good pose with forms moving in and out of space. This is the kind of stuff you want to look at. It's a little pricey, but people pay $70 for video games. If you're interested in about, improving your artwork, you're willing to pay a couple of dollars, to get a good, solid book with excellent artistic instruction that's not only going to show you the underlying muscles and the skeleton, and it's going to give you the names of the muscles, but it's also going to show you how the figure moves, how the outside is affected. Look at this right here. I mean, this is just it's worth everything right here. There's just so much that just can be learned from just studying these diagrams. Are you going to draw every muscle? No, that's not the point. But you have to know it's there. You have to know how this muscle flows into the sacrum here, how the buttocks are almost an upside down butterfly shape, the hip bone, the great trochanter, how when the figure puts its weight on one leg, it raises this hip, this shoulder goes up. That's called contrapposto. This is a book that you need to sit with for years. You're not going to absorb all the information in a week. You're not going to absorb all the information even in a year. This is something that just needs to be studied in perpetuity. I keep it handy. I do refer to it, and I do practice from it. And in my next video, I'm going to show you how I use some of the knowledge that I've gleaned from this book to enhance, my own drawings. So I definitely recommend this book, The Complete Guide to Anatomy for Artists and Illustrators. It's available on Amazon. You can probably get it on eBay too, and whatever other sources that you are using for your edification when it comes to improving your artwork. So let me just move some things here. The one thing that all these books I've shown you today have in common is an emphasis on the fundamentals of art. How to reduce things down to basic shapes and forms, just like here, or for instance, this fabulous book here, The Figure. We'll just use an example here. Notice the reduction of that. You have that photo, and it's being reduced down to basic forms, and again, into a mannequin, which can be developed into a finished piece of art. They're showing you the skeleton that's underneath there, and then you're getting something that's almost close to being finished. And there's some talk about the hand, the skeleton, the muscles of the face, how they attach to the skull. Super important stuff to know, regardless of what your stylistic approach is. Again, using the mannequin to create good poses. So I would really, really get after this book. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how I use it. So before I close today, I just want to leave you with a couple of words. Your improvement is in your hands. If you're dedicated to improving and you have the mindset of a student, you're going to make the leaps. You're going to be at a plateau for maybe quite a while. And then one day you'll sit down to draw and you'll suddenly realize that you've taken a step. You've improved in some area. Learning how to draw is learning how to see. And what you have to do is train yourself into reducing things into basic shapes. And I'll give you an example from just some practicing that I do here. This drawing is just a female. Everything is reduced down to basic forms. What I'm looking for in these sketches is just lines that flow through the figure, because I draw through, and I'm going to show you that when I do my next video using some of the material from these books. Keep working at it, keep practicing, but make sure that what you are using as a source is good, solid, foundational stuff that really gets to the nitty-gritty of showing you how to build a figure from the inside out, how to use gesture, how to use basic forms. And if I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but I just really can't emphasize this stuff enough to get you, aware that This may not look glamorous. It doesn't look like comic books. It doesn't look like your favorite artist, and it's not supposed to, because this is instructional material. This is where I guarantee that the best artists, I'll throw out some names: John Buscema, Frank Frazetta, Vern Hogarth, Gil Kane, Alex Ross, so many others. We could be here all day with that. All have the fundamentals of drawing, proportion, down pat, but they continue to work on it. Every good artist continues to practice and expand their knowledge, but also retain the fundamentals. So if you're serious, get yourself to work, get a hold of some of these books. One other bit of advice I'll give you too is I do use sketchbooks, but I find that, if I draw in a sketchbook, there's almost a certain pressure to produce a really good drawing because it's a nice sketchbook. I do virtually all of my drawings on 11 by 17 copy paper. And if I produce something that I like, I will retain this piece of paper and transfer it into a sketchbook or use it as a springboard for developing an idea. If I don't like the drawing, it goes into the recycling. But there's no pressure because this is just cheap office copy paper that you can pretty much do anything to. So I think I was doing some face studies here. But yeah, that's the approach that I would take with this stuff. Again, here's another example gleaned from those books of reducing things down to their basic forms. So I hope you found all of this information useful. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you could drop me a like, if you could subscribe. This is a small channel and I would like to see it grow. And then on the next video, the third part of this series about hitting the books, I'm going to show you the books that I use. I'm going to discuss the use of photo reference, how you incorporate it into your work, how you use it to inform your drawings. And I'm going to show you just some of my techniques for gesture and trying to capture the feel of a pose, the essence of a pose, if you will. Well, I hope you got something out of this. I will see you soon. Take the best care.